Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the preview for the 2025 season for the NBA. I'm your host, Patrick McDonald, again, joined by my co-host, Sheldon Kaufman. This is episode 2. Still in the Southeast Division, we're talking about the Charlotte Hornets. We're starting off really strong here. Um, we both were in the area. We grew up around this. We know the talk around the Hornets and the Hawks as well, but uh, you know, we're the Hawks and the Hornets aren't very good. The Hornets are especially very bad.
The bottom line.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging. It was very challenging doing work for this one because you have to look for a lot of bad to find the good. But there's some bright spots in this team, and I do think they're starting to do things right, and I think they're making a lot of the new moves. Um, they this year obviously they completely cleaned house with the people running the business. Uh, so it's a blank slate essentially. Going into the 24 team, it wasn't very good. Cats out the bag, 21-61 record, 13th in the Eastern Conference. Didn't sniff the playoffs. 16 or their Pythagorean record, which is their expected record based off of their point differentials. Um, it's 18-64, which was the worst in the NBA. So, although they weren't the worst in actual record, based off of what they produced, they were probably the worst roster in the league. Uh, it's telling you that there's a good bit of work to do with this team, and ownership clearly knew it. Uh, the fans clearly knew it. I went to Charlotte to watch a game, and dude, the fans were like, "Yeah, people just come here and run the town." It's like,
I went to watch the Wizards, and there was about maybe 100 seats filled. No one
yeah,
was there. It was crazy.
and it's like there's always more away fans at the Hornets, and it's like I think a winning culture could really change that because it is a really good sports city in general. Um, the Panthers still draw crowds with how
Well,
bad.
when the Panthers were good, you saw how the city popped out for them.
Oh yeah, it's a
It was
great
really
it's a great city, and I mean it's got a wide range too. The in the NBA, obviously, there's still Memphis pretty close, but people want an Eastern and a Western Conference team. Memphis is in the West. I don't know how, but they are. Anyway, more on the record stuff. 11-13 at home, 10-31 on the road. They just were not good at either place. Pre All Star, 14-38. Post All Star, 8-20. Again, just was not very good. 14-38 versus the East, and then 7-23 versus the West. Again, overall, not very good. And then in clutch games, they were ranked 23rd in performing in the clutch games at 15-20, and then in other games they were 6-41. So they were on the other side of blowout games a lot more than they were in. Just any other things you got on that before we move forward to the statistical stuff?
just if you're about to go into the statistical stuff, then no, I don't.
Yeah. Additionally, you could tell they were not a very good team with
Yeah,
how they carried themselves on and off the court. A lot of the players doing a lot of dumb shit. So put it briefly, Steve Clifford throwing guys under the bus. Yeah,
it's bad
just
culture. Bad
very
culture.
bad culture. Thankfully, they've now had a complete reset of not the ownership, but the people running the show and the people coaching, and hopefully there should be a lot of real change going on. in this organization. Um, Moving forward to the statistical stuff, they had the worst net rating in the league. This was made up by a 109 offensive rating, which was 28th, and a 119 defensive rating, which was 29th. Again, not good. They were not that great in transition offense, 21st ranked, 18th in transition defense. It's actually not bad. I was expecting it to be a lot worse based off of a lot of Steve Clifton's
Yeah, that's
comments.
actually weird.
Yeah, but they still weren't great at it, but they were better than you would have expected with a team that has the discourse around it that they do. In the offense, in their half-court offense, they were 20th in pick-and-roll ball handler efficiency, and they had the highest usage. So they were running it a ton, and they were pretty not good at running it. 31st percentile, a big bulk of their offense, they were bad at, and they ran it a ton. Defending it, they were 8th in actually defending it, and they were attacked in that capacity 25th percent or 25th, 76%. So they were pretty good at defending pick and roll. At least the ball handlers. On the roll side, they were worse in defending the pick and roll man, and it was attacked 16th most. They were 10th percentile in defending pick and roll. On offense, they generally had some good playmakers, like we went over with the Hawks. LaMelo missed a lot of time, but they had LaMelo, they had Terry Rozier, they had some guys. Their bigs didn't get much. 17th in big efficiency, 14th in usage, 45th in percentile on offense. As you can see, with a lot of the pick and roll stuff, they're not very good at it. Anything you got on that?
Yeah, I also want to talk about Miles Bridges. Last year, I think that was the first year we saw him back from the suspension with his the off court stuff. Yeah. But I mean, all things aside, he had a really good year. 21 points per game, 7.3 rebounds. He showed why he got the extension he got that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But he was one of the bright spots for that team.
Yeah, and he did a lot of carrying their offense more than he probably should have had to with LaMelo Ball missing a ton of time.
Which I think helped the growth.
Yeah, he's definitely a better player than I thought he was a year or so ago. How good he actually is, we're not sure yet. He was the best scorer on a really bad offense.
Yep.
And his exact usage on the team, in how they're going to use him, maybe he has a lot to do with why their pick and roll ball handlers were not very good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He probably was not very good at it, but he was asked to do it a ton. It gets him a ton of points, and he's not bad at it. But he shouldn't probably be your number one guy running pick and roll ball handles. That being said, they weren't bad on defense defending pick and roll. As far as isolation, they were 26th in efficiency, 24th in frequency, 13th percentile. More stuff on why their offensive rating was 28th. Defending, isolation, 13th, which isn't bad, but it was not attacked very often. 27th in frequency, 41st percentile. And, it's not too bad compared to a lot of the stuff going on here. And then in post-ups, their other form of half-court offense, 14th in post-up efficiency, which isn't bad, 24th in frequency, 55th percentile. Again, not bad, but they don't have a bunch of guys who they go to a lot for it. And then on defense, 28th in post-up defense, 17th in frequency, 7th percentile. Really bad.
Yep.
And you you look at it and you're like, well, if they just get a little bit more out of their bigs on defense, and they could have a pretty solid defense. We'll get into why I think that's not the case necessarily, but I think that there's a little bit of a push and pull with their pick and roll perimeter defense there that's going
Yeah,
on. I think they're really pushing towards stopping ball handlers. They're not doing stuff good with the bigs, and it's a lot of the lineup stuff. As far as offensive rebounding, 27th. They're not getting a ton of extra rebounds and possessions on offense. 22nd in stopping possessions on defense with defensive rebounds. Uh, it bleeds in even more to their defense not being very good. Uh, Anything on that standpoint that you want to comment on?
I mean, no, it sounds like, or the bigs I kind of wanted to comment on. They have an interesting big situation. I actually like Mark Williams a lot. He only played 9 games for him last year. He averaged 12 points per game, 9 rebounds in that stretch. I think when they get him back, maybe those numbers will
Yeah,
decrease a little bit.
I think the rebounding post up should see a little bit of a bump from Mark for sure. He's
Yeah,
very good.
and then I mean they kind of have a similar sense. They like him and Nick Richards are the same type of player. Um, but Mark Williams is a lot better defensively.
Yeah, he's a lot
So I mean, I
rangier.
think yeah, exactly. He's a good athlete. I mean, he's good around the rim. I think he can help a lot coming back for them. I
Yeah,
think that's why some of those numbers could be skewed, I guess, but I still think they're like a terrible defense, obviously. Like he's
yeah.
not going to change them drastically, but they will improve.
Mm-hmm. And then other numbers that I don't have written down, they were a very good team as far as forcing deflections and turnovers. And I think that plays a lot into their pick and roll ball handling defense. And we'll go
Yeah.
into the scheme talk about why that's the case in a second. As far as shooting, they were 15th in 3 point frequency, 22nd in efficiency. Not a great 3 point shooting team. As far as pull ups, they were 21st in pull up efficiency, and then they were 12th in attempts. So this is an okay shooting team. They've made some moves to actually change that a little bit too, but not a great shooting team, um, which plays into their offense as well. That was one of the worst. Um, Now getting into the coaching and scheme stuff, I pulled up the lineup data for them because I think it's really important for a lot of the stuff that they did do outside just the players that they brought in. Um, I didn't, based off of what they played last season. Yeah, they like to play two guards, one big. Um, this was Terry Rozier, Misic. This was Trey Mann. This was LaMelo Ball. A bunch of these guys. They had a ton of these guards that they were playing. They were a ton of minutes too. They were initiating through their ball handlers. Basically every time we saw they had the number one frequency in big ball handling tendency. Um, they did a good bit of three guard or one guard out there, and then three wings. Um, and then they would do that with PJ Washington and Grant Williams at the power forward spot, uh, which PJ and Grant were traded for each other. So over the full season, they were doing that.
Yeah.
Um, and then even with, uh, they had some good positional size. They never played small ball. They only played one big ever, so they never played big. Pete or Grant's always at center or at power forward. And then when they would utilize Grant Williams would often guard guards. Similarly with PJ. These guys are guarding guards. They're not actually offering you much size, which I think is a lot of the reason why, hey, you have four guys who can guard on ball pretty well, but then not, you have your center giving you stuff off ball on defense, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes a lot of sense. They have a lot of guys, they have a lot of the kind of the guys that they signed this offseason to fit that scheme. It's kind of making sense now that I'm hearing it. like Josh Green, and then they have Brandon Miller, Grant Williams, like you said, all those wings that they like to play with the LaMelo Ball combo.
And a lot of the two guard stuff did shy away a little bit once Terry Rozier was traded, and then it was
Mm-hmm.
almost exclusively one guard, three wings, a center. Um, Something that they did address in this offseason was bringing in some height at the power forward spot. Not exclusively just height, because PJ Washington did have height, but like good positional size and athleticism as well. Um,
Yep.
they did bring that in, and I think a lot of the lineups where Grant Williams is playing power forward and guarding their point guards, I think should change a lot more this season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Looking into the coaching stuff, they brought in their new GM this year, Jeff Peterson. He was the Nets assistant GM from 2019 to 2024. Now they're new GM in Charlotte. He brought in a guy named Charles Lee, who was working under him in Brooklyn. He was interim for the Hawks back in 2018. He worked with Coach Bud Budenholzer in Milwaukee, and he was an assistant last season for Boston. What
Championship
is
team.
important here? These are a lot of pretty good teams. Bud, he played with Bud or he coached under Bud in Atlanta. He moved with him to Milwaukee. He undersaw the rise of that Milwaukee team to become the really good Milwaukee teams that have been in the past 7 years now. He coached under Missoula and Austin this season, and I think this is really important with the three wing lineups, because that is what Boston did. Jason Tatum playing, at the 4 spot, guarding 5 sometimes, giving you a lot of stuff to do on defense. And I think I really like this hire, even though he's a rookie head coach. I think he's bringing in a lot of the tools that you want to see, and he could really implement a lot of the stuff with how their roster's built into a winning way that has worked for other teams like Boston and Milwaukee.
Yeah, and like you said, like mentioning those teams, all those teams had great small forwards, like Giannis, like Tatum, and then you can so he's seen how those guys work and what they do, and like a young guy like Brandon Miller that could be that type of build, I think that's gonna be really great for him, for Brandon Miller especially.
I agree, and additionally, Tijon Salon will be drafted this season.
Yes.
I think we'll definitely get into that
Yeah.
lot on the draft, because I do have some stuff to say there. Blaine Mueller, he worked with Charles Lee in Milwaukee and Boston. He was the Celtics G League coach this season. He moves over now to coach with Charles Lee in Charlotte. Chris Gent worked with Lee on the Hawks. Josh Longstaff worked with him on the Bucks, and then Jermaine Buckner worked with Lee on the Celtics. So he's bringing in a lot of guys who he has worked with, in a lot of the cases in some pretty successful settings. This is typically what happens with new head coaches. They bring in a lot of guys who they like, but I think they did a good job with this hire, and I think it should really help based off of what they were trying to do last year and how the roster is built.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, he's gonna want to be around people that he's been with before and he's coached with before. So,
Exactly.
Bringing a lot of familiar faces is not that surprising. But it's good that they've also come from winning programs.
And then Peterson obviously definitely did like what he had in Charles Lee as well. He's an assistant GM of a team that had been pretty good for a couple of years there in Brooklyn, and he liked what he saw in Lee. So I think this is a good hire with Charles Lee. Other schematic stuff. The Nets similarly, which is where Lee came from, would play these 3-wing lineups. Boston played these lineups. This is where Charles Lee is coming from. not much on what he's going to do with his bigs on defense. In Milwaukee, they play drop. Brook Lopez, that's probably pretty situational, but they could do that with Mark Williams as well. In Boston, they did similar things with Porzingis and drop. I could imagine that's what they do with Mark Williams. It's definitely an open book on what they have schematically going forward.
Just have to wait and see first season. See what he wants to bring in.
For sure. And, it might be that they just run it pretty straight up while they're still filling out the roster that they have. I'm interested in what he has going forward to the offseason now. In the draft this season, at the 6th overall pick, they drafted Tijon Salon. There were a lot of comparisons, like how this class was considered a weak class, similarly to the 2013 draft. Tijon Salon obviously would have gotten a lot of that being like, hey, what if this is the next Giannis just staring at us in our eyes? They brought in a guy who oversaw the Giannis breakout. I think it's a good hire. I don't think Tijon Salon will be the next Giannis. That's outlandish to just say that's going to happen, but if it were to happen, I think they're doing what they need to be doing to have Tijon still develop.
Yeah, I like Salon a lot. He's a good defender. He's 6'9", 217, and I think he's like a 7'2" wingspan, 7-foot wingspan, something.
He has
something crazy.
Body.
And he can shoot too. He can shoot the ball, but he just needs to be more consistent with scoring, more efficient.
I agree. He's got some feel stuff to figure out, but he's got the shot. He's got the size, and he does care on defense. I think it's a good pickup. And maybe he doesn't start day one. And he might not even be NBA quality day one. But I think if you get him in a good development program, he could be a really, really good player. All the stuff is there. It's a good pick. Anything else you got there?
Not on Tijon Salon. I think we pretty much touched on it all, and it's going to be great that the guy who oversaw Giannis is going to be getting a similar type of player.
I agree, and even if it's not Giannis, he just worked with Jason Tatum. Yep. I think Tijon compares a lot more similarly to Tatum. Same height, same length on defense, similar type of offensive game. They shoot the three really well. Maybe he needs to improve finishing at the rim. Yep. Tatum was not a good rim finisher coming into the league. I think it's going to be a really good pick. I think more than Giannis, I think they see Tijon as their Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
In whatever they think their championship team would look like. And other pick that they made at the 12th pick in the second round, they drafted KJ Simpson, small scoring guard, very similar with what the previous regime would be drafting. They drafted your Malik Monks, your Nick Smith Juniors, a bunch of these guys. He's on a two-way contract, so KJ won't obviously be a key contributor for them this season, but it's a good pickup. He might get some NBA time this season, especially with a lot of the injury history players on their team.
Yeah, I actually like KJ Simpson a lot. I mean, he averaged 19.7 points per game at Colorado, and he shot 43% from the three-point line. So, I mean, and he can score at all three levels. I was watching the March Madness game, the playing game versus Boise State, and it was early in the game, and he went up against a guy way bigger than him at the rim and finished and got the bucket in. I mean, obviously, like you said, I think, being kind of like that, send him down to the G League, let him develop. I mean, I think he could be a good player for them in the future. Nothing like crazy, but maybe like one of those role guys, that comes off the bench. Maybe like a Seth Curry role, comes off the bench to give you like 3-point buckets.
Yeah, I mean, how he's going to get on the court right away is his shooting.
Yeah,
when he gets on the court and has to play more than they probably want him to, he could definitely leave a good taste in the ownership's mouth that he can do more than just shoot threes. I think
Yeah.
there's significant upside with this pick, and at the worst, he is a decent fifth guard on your roster. I think it's a good pickup for that version.
Yep.
Other additions and subtractions this offseason. They brought in the ageless Taj Gibson.
I'm honestly, I can't believe he keeps getting a job. I was shocked that New York signed him back whenever, because he never plays ever. He never plays on these teams unless there's like a minute left. But I mean, I guess he's a veteran. He's a veteran small forward that's been doing it forever. I can't remember the last time he played significant minutes, but he's just that's one of those small forward veteran guys that they brought in to teach.
Yeah, and it's like I couldn't even track him to the new coaching tree either. I was like, how did Todd get a job here? It wasn't even for tips.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, it was a 1-year veteran minimum contract, so it's not going to do anything bad. But it's
just funny.
It gets an experienced guy in the.
It's definitely. I mean, in theory, it's a good hire. You get a really experienced guy with a team that has a lot of small forwards.
It's like Andre Iguodala the last couple of years of his career, where he's kind of just an assistant coach, also as a player.
Yeah,
it's a guy who's played on some good teams, and it's good to have. They got in on the huge Klay Thompson deal, like the 5-team trade.
Yeah, that was crazy.
They sweeped in and they got Josh Green for a 2nd-round pick. It's perfectly like this is how you want to take your Flyers. You give up nothing and you get a guy who could play for you. I think if we go over what we think their starting lineups are going to be, Josh Green is probably in them.
Yeah, Josh Green, he played a big role for Dallas too.
Yeah, and it was
season.
on a Dallas team that was pretty they didn't know what they were doing with their wings. But Josh Green was a guy in the mix there. And I think prior to that, the Hornets didn't have anybody who could have been in that mix besides Brandon Miller.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a really good 3-and-D, and he's definitely I think he's a better Grant Williams. He's way better than Grant Williams, that's for sure. And I think that he's more polished than Brandon Miller. So I think he's definitely gonna. He definitely should be in the starting lineup. I don't see how you can not put him in there.
Yeah, I agree. And it's maybe you don't think he's better than some of the guys too, but it's you need to have a good NBA player, and I think that's what Josh Green is. And he's not just your static only can shoot corner threes guy. He is a little athletic. He can guard 1 through 3 pretty well. It's a great pickup for a 2nd-round pick. Good job.
Really good, yeah. Good trade.
Good job for Peterson to pick up a guy like that in his first season. They brought back Seth Curry on a vet minimum. Another Taj Gibson. You want this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
They re-signed Miles Bridges to a 3-year, $75 million. Based on what he did last season, that's fine.
Just lock him down long term. I think that's what they were trying to do there.
And then interesting part about that deal is it's descending. So year 1, I believe it's 27, 28 million. And it goes down $2 million each season. So it progressively gets better. Yeah. And I think that's a perfectly good deal to make as Peterson here in his first season with the team. Because what they were going to do with Miles Bridges was really up in the air. Not just because of the off-court stuff, but also the on-court stuff. You don't know.
I think he proved it. I think he proved it in a year that he needed to prove it.
Yeah, he proved that at the very least he's a tank leader.
Yes, exactly. He proved he can score when Melo's out.
Yeah, and he showed that there is probably some avenue to using him on a good team.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe he's not even the 100th best player in the NBA, which might be the case.
Yeah.
But he's still a guy that you want to retain, keep in house, which beforehand he might not have been.
Yeah.
Even if the contract might be a little rich for a guy in that realm of player, you still need to keep good players on your team, especially if you are in pursuit of that. Um, even with that Bridges contract next season, so after the season would complete, they're projected $48 million in cap space. So there's more room to bring in good guys. I think good work for Peterson here. As far as the subtractions, they lost JT Thor. He played 60 games for them. He's 6'8". He kind of shoots. It's not big. Bryce McGowan's he's not bad. He's kind of like Kmart Josh Green.
Yep.
Is the way I would describe it. Brought in a better guy anyway. Marquise Bolden, he was a guy on a two-way. Didn't play much. Whatever. Wizards legend Davis Bertans. They lost him.
Thank God.
And then the one that
Davis Bertans.
The one that I did not like them losing. This is, I think, where their miss kind of was. Is losing Amari Bailey. He was a second rounder for them a year ago, and of course it was the previous regime, so this new regime wouldn't be too attached to him. But last season he played in the G League primarily, and he did play pretty good there. He averaged 19 on 42% 3-point shooting in the G League, and he's 6'5" combo guard. You kind of want to keep this type of guy. I mean, it's not going to kill you. It's a fifth guard type of guy. They didn't lose a ton. They didn't gain a ton, but they definitely gained more than they lost in the free agency side of things. Yep. Any other off-season stuff that you want to bring up? I think
did they lose that Poku? The you know what I'm talking about?
Shevsky
He's the skinny-looking dude.
Thunder.
Yeah, Pajeski. Yeah. I think they lost him
too. They did. I think they did lose him as well. You're right.
Yeah, I don't really know how. I knew that he was good. When he first became, people started knowing about him. He was pretty good. But I think his career kind of fizzled out now.
Yeah, I think it was
nothing really. Yeah.
Similar to Miles Bridges. It's he's on a bad team and he doesn't do much to make the bad team better, so he's probably not very good. It's like if Miles Bridges didn't have the prove it season 3 years ago and then had another one this season.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. And you had brought it up pre-pod that they did bring in Reggie Jackson. I'm not sure if they're going to keep him. They did bring him in.
I can see that just being a trade. They're going to trade him away to...
Or they're just going to cut him.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Again, it's Reggie Jackson. It's not huge.
Nope.
But they did the textbook stuff right. They didn't try to hit a home run. Right.
Yep.
But they also didn't strike out trying to hit him.
Exactly.
So I think this is pretty standard for the first season operating a team. I think they did a good job. I think they brought in, like we said, a good coach to fit a lot of the young players that they have. Now just going into this final little section here, we're going to talk about the lineups that I think that they're going to run. Last season, LaMelo was out 52, or in the past 2 seasons, LaMelo Ball's played 52 games.
Yeah, that's rough. That's not what you can't have that from your franchise player.
If any team loses their best player for what is that, 30 per? Their best player played 30% of their games the last 2 seasons. If any team has that happen, they're probably going to nosedive. And it happened to a team that was already barely afloat before that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now keep in mind, LaMelo's last full healthy season, they made the play-in game, and I believe they were over 500. A lot of the roster's a little bit different now. New people running the show. Mark Williams, like you said, had played 9 games last year. In the short amount of time in this season, believe it was in those 9 games that LaMelo Ball, Mark Williams, and Brandon Miller all played together. They had a 10.2 net rating, so they were outscoring teams by 10 points.
Yep.
That's really good stuff. That is championship contender caliber lineup stuff. Now, of course, it was 9 regular season games. I'm not sure who those 9 regular season games were against.
Yeah.
But from the pixie dust amount that we got from that lineup, it was pretty good. So you would think that anything that they're doing is being built around that. Now I ask you this: who do you think is filling out those other 2 spots and the 5 bench spots?
So obviously you got LaMelo, the starting 5, right?
Yeah, we'll start with starting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So LaMelo at 1, and then you're gonna have Mark Williams for sure.
Mark and Brandon.
Yep. Yeah, Mark and Brandon. I was gonna say Mark Brandon. I think Josh Green.
I think
Josh Green.
Yeah. I think
LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Josh Green, Mark Williams. And then it depends what you want to run. If you run like the 2 guard, maybe throw like Michik in there.
Yeah,
he's a good playmaker. He's a good player. I don't know. I think then maybe Grant Williams.
Yeah, and
is
then
he?
The thing is with Grant too is like Grant kind of guards your 2 guards and your point guards. So it's like you want to have other positional size if you have Grant on the floor. So it's like in those lineups, you probably want Brandon and Tijon out there. That's how I see Tijon playing day one.
You think Solana? Do you think he starts day 1?
No. Just in other bench lineups. I think Tijon plays with Grant Williams a ton.
Yeah, I think that last spot's kind of could be a revolving. I think it's going to be a revolving door, but I think that main 4 is definitely what you need.
Yeah,
Josh Green, Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Mark Williams.
And then because they paid them, it's going to be Miles Bridges to start, right? Like,
yes, Miles Bridges for sure.
But ideally, it's not going to be him. Ideally, he fills in there now until Tijon's ready. Probably not even next season. He might not even be ready, but he could surprise us day 1 and be a stud. Right?
Yeah. I think also a problem with this Hornets team. Sorry, but it's the depth. They don't have a lot of good depth.
Yeah, and like you look at it, it's like, oh, these guys are NBA players.
Yeah.
And I believe they did. Also, they haven't officially lost him yet, but they have yet to re-sign Trey Mann. And he was pretty decent for them. He was a good scorer for them. I think that's a real depth piece for them. Nick Smith Jr., I would assume they have stepped in to fill in some backup guard roles. He's a scorer more than a facilitator. Micic, like you mentioned, is probably a backup point guard.
Yeah, I've been seeing things on Nick Smith Jr. He's definitely a shooter. I don't know. It's hard to say that he's definitely not a facilitator. I think you just said that, but
yeah,
I mean he's a lights out shooter, like 43%.
Yeah,
but his passing is like just not there.
It's a step slow and a dollar short for sure.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how they fill out all of the other playing time, and especially with injuries. LaMelo and Mark Williams being as injury prone as they've shown already, it really, like, you start to scratch a couple guys, and it's like, well, dang, this is not an NBA rotation.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think that's a very valid point. I think, that's what's going to hurt them this year is they might have these guys that, in theory, like you said, like those 3 together in that small sample size was, like, really good together. But how often are they going to be able to play together? And also the guys around them aren't going to be able to help them at all, really.
Yeah, I agree. can't even make anything out of synergistic fits just because nobody's really played that much with LaMelo Ball. Um, One strength that I do think they have is they have good center play. Nick Richards is an NBA center and was their backup.
Yeah.
We mentioned Mark Williams. He's good, right? He, at least through his first 2 years and 90 games, he looks really good. Um, Brandon Miller, he's really good in his rookie season. Has he proven he's a really good winning player yet? Probably not yet, but
he proved he can ball though. He proved he can hold his own in the NBA though, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say we'll have to see, obviously, sophomore season, but I think he was one of the better rookies this year.
I agree. He was a top 6 rookie for sure. And building forward, ideally, you look in 3 years from now and you have Brandon Miller and Tishawn Salon, and you're like, yeah, that is our Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, if that's the ceiling, let's see what Tishawn can do now. I think that's the main thing. The Hornets' success, obviously, not all of revolves around him, but it could be a major piece.
But how we look at this offseason, I think entirely revolves around him.
Yes, no, 100%.
Is the point I'm trying to make here.
No, yeah, 100%, yes.
No,
yes.
Going forward for this season, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, X Factor. Who do we got here? Because
I'm gonna go offensive MVP is LaMelo. I think LaMelo can stay healthy this year, and I think he does. I mean, people might forget what LaMelo Ball is because he's been injured for so long, but he's a great shooter, playmaker, and he's a triple-double threat. He averaged 24 points last year, 8 assists, 5 rebounds as a guard.
I agree. He's for sure the guy who we have to project for offensive MVP. Like, when he did play in 24 games, I think was what you said, he was great, right? He still looked like LaMelo Ball from 2 seasons ago.
Yes.
Whether or not that places him at 44 or 24, it doesn't matter. He's definitely their guy.
Yeah.
On the defensive side, we're not sure yet. They sucked there. Is kind of where I'm looking. It's probably Mark Williams.
Yeah, I was gonna say that because I think Mark Williams is he's actually a good defender. He just didn't get the chance to play. So I think Mark Williams is a strong case, and I think he will be a good defender this year. Yeah,
and
I like that.
I look at it this way: do you have a team that was already good at defending perimeter pick and roll? Now, instead of having to play Grant Williams to do that, now they can play Josh Green, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and actually do that without compromising their other size and athleticism. And now you have Mark Williams to defend the post and secure rebounds that they didn't have last season. There's an avenue to where this is a pretty solid defense next season. Will it happen? I'm not sure yet, but it's for sure possible. And then, like we said, you have guys. I mean, no matter what he is in the long term, Tishawn is still 6'9" with a center standing reach.
Yeah. No, I mean he's big. Pause, but
that is more than anything PJ Washington gave them on the defensive end last year, and PJ's solid.
PJ Washington's good. Yeah. I mean, you saw it with the run he had last year with the Mavericks.
Yeah, he's not bad on defense. He definitely didn't care that much with the Hornets, but
no, yeah, for sure.
I think they've made the moves to improve the defense, and I think bringing back LaMelo Ball should help them on offense. Overall, do we think they got better?
Wait, do you have an X factor for the team?
Oh, yes, you're right. Brandon Miller is my X factor. Who was yours?
I'm gonna go a different route. I think if Miles Bridges has another season like this, it could be big for him. And if he can improve his shooting numbers from 3 just a little bit, it could be huge with stretching the floor. And I think if he turns into like that big like that 21 points per if he averages 21 points per game again this year, this team could be a lot better than they were last year because that would
Yeah,
give Brandon Miller more opportunities. LaMelo Ball will have more opportunities because then you actually have to focus on guarding Miles Bridges.
yeah,
So I think that's why it could be an X factor. But I think Brandon Miller would be my other one if I had to choose.
because we expect that this team should be better, right?
Yeah.
And if Miles Bridges is still giving you that production on a better team, then suddenly this team is a lot better than we think it is. Because I mean, I'm not sure how you feel, but I feel like Miles Bridges is like a fringe NBA starter who does do a lot of things for you that a bad team would really prioritize because he can score, right? He's athletic, he has decent touch, he's got good handle. He can score for you. But if he's doing it on a very like what we think could be a good team, um, then he's a lot better than what I think he is. So I do agree with what you say there.
Yeah.
The reason I say Brendan Miller is if he just takes the next step to become like not in like the Paul George ranch, but if he's like he's a great shooter again, and he's doing more outside of just his shooting,
Like kind of like maybe Chris Middleton type role.
yeah, stuff like that. He gets better with the feel of the game and maybe better as a passer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those type of players, they get $200 million on the open market.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're getting that out of Brandon Miller, then I think this is probably, I don't know if they will, but that could mean that they're a playoff team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. And he definitely showed that he could be that kind of guy. Like you said, like what they want him to be. He showed that he can do that, but we'll see.
I agree. Overall, on predictions, do we think that they got better? I think yes, because they were the worst team in the league last year. I don't know how much better they got, but I think they did get better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as far as what is their team this next upcoming season better than what we think their 2014 was? Yes. As far as moving up in the pedigree of championship contention, maybe.
I think that I think that this year is not the year. I think that they're not going to be good at all. I think they're going to be trash. I think they're going to be bottom of the league again. They will be better, bottom of the league again. Next year, which it's going to hurt them because next year they don't have their first round pick. I think it's top 14 protected to the Spurs. So next year they don't have a first round pick.
That means that
Or no, it was some. I saw it somewhere that if they don't get their first round pick if it's top 14. So it's you can look it. Yeah, look it up. But
keep talking.
yeah, I believe it's unprotected. So they have the makings. They have the youth. They have the new coach, the new regime that they could possibly take off in the next future years, especially with LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller. Mark Williams is still young, especially if Solana can really play to what he's capable of. This could be a really interesting team in the next few years. Better than any Hornets team we've ever seen.
Okay, yeah, so you're right. The Hornets are incentivized to actually make the playoffs this year because they get their pick if they are not in the lottery.
Yeah, but I don't think they are going to get.
Yeah.
So they're looking at a possible no top lottery pick next year, which is going to suck.
I agree. Yeah, if they do make the playoffs, then that turns into a second round pick, and their first round picks are whatever their picks are. So interestingly, they are incentivized to win in a season where a lot of teams are trying to lose to get high in this draft, which I think, knowing that now, I do think that they will actually really try to push for the playing game.
I think they will, but I just don't know how good they. Like, I don't know if they're good enough to
I
make
don't
that
know
10
either.
seed. Yeah, that's the
And
thing. I just don't see this team being able to do that.
we'll certainly in the Indiana episode we will definitely probably have a lot to consider with this team.
Yeah,
Um, and like you said, I think this is the team where you start to see the things lay out and how this could be a future, hopefully championship
contender.
winning team. Yes,
Yes.
but it's definitely not going to be this year. And I think the overall quality of the team probably won't be any better than the 2022 team that was 42-40 that made the play.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
And then any other like predictions from the for the season?
I don't really have anything. I think I covered it all. Obviously, I'm hoping Miles Bridges. I think that he can certify himself as a pretty good power forward slash small forward. But I don't know. I don't think they're going to be good though. So
Yeah, my
that's all I really got.
my
Or I
two
think
per-
I think Lamelo Ball. I'm hoping Lamelo Ball can stay healthy because I think that he can be like. I think he could be like a Trey Young, but better, but way better.
yeah, like Vanilla Ball is their floor raiser that takes them from a 20-win team to a 35 team.
No, yeah, 100%.
That's the difference. If they had Trey Young last year, they probably have 35 wins just like the Hornets did.
Yeah.
I think the Miller Ball is exactly that for them. My two predictions for the season were real strides from Brandon because of
Yep.
obviously the coaching that they brought in to prioritize Brandon and Tijon, and then another very bad Hornets team.
Yep. I think those are two going to be accurate predictions.
Yeah.
And
So overall for the offseason, they made the right decisions on who to hire to prioritize the guys. We don't see the team being there right now, but it could happen sooner than later. And
I
if
think
that's
it's like a 5-year window for this team. And I think that within that 5-year window, within next 2 years, it's going to be kind of the same bottom, better than last year, but still at the bottom. And then they'll really start to take off year 3 and 4.
yes, for sure. And hopefully they hit on some of their picks these last 2 years. Another thing that we didn't ever mention, picking Brandon over Scoot when everybody wanted Scoot.
Yeah.
Really,
It's looking like the right pick.
and that was the past regime, but still, I mean, good stuff.
Yeah.
They're showing that they are operating better than they had in the past decade. I think they're not better now, but they will be in the next couple years. Good offseason from the Hornets.
Yeah, future's really bright.
And unless we have anything else on them, I think we're just about done. The next episode should be the Miami Heat. I think that'll be a really fun one. We didn't have much analytics to go into with the Hornets because with these bad teams, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Like some of 90% of the guys aren't in the league next year. Yeah.
A lot of old veterans and just like random players.
Two-way contract guys.
Yeah, a lot of two-way contract guys.
And they're gonna move away from that a little bit. And I think that's it for the Hornets, unless you got anything else.
Nope.
All right. Next episode will be the Miami Heat. It should hopefully release on regular schedule, and we will see you then.